Why do some people blame or credit Barack Obama, who was elected in 2009, for the Reagan-era 1985 Lifeline program for Americans that are under or just above the poverty line, a program funded by FCC-established Universal Service Fund that taxes telecom companies? It currently allows 70 minutes free every month and or a $10 a month phone bill discount for people who are poor. It added cell phones in 2008. The first handheld mobile phone came out in 1983. So the entire time this project had been in play to help poor people get access to phones, it optionally would allow you to get a phone that was a cell phone if you could get one. And it would give you the same $10 a little bit off and maybe 70 minutes free. The telecom companies had to do it. Now I'm going to bring up the history of this for a minute, but why did this get called the Obama phone? Because during Obama's administration, the obviousness of, hey, let's have mobile phones added in also should include, hey, maybe we should also include internet access. Obviously, at the time, most internet access still is done through a telecom company. It's either done through a wired RJ whatever the heck connector phone line, a cable connection. A company in your area is probably a phone company that does cable or a cable company that does phones. And cable. So it's a bunch of telecommunications and FCC regulated shit because it's cell phones or TV if it's going through a cable line. And or it's a telephone system which is also FCC regulated if it uses landlines at all. Even if it uses them through any other means. If you see the cable there and you can plug in a normal telephone from the for crying out loud, I don't even know how old of a phone you can plug in these days, but you can get away with plugging it. It's an actual standard. It's really a standard. It has to work with old shit. Ringer equivalence 1 is dominant. If you want to use these features, even if it's not, it's FCC regulated and all that kind of stuff, but it's a phone line. It's wired, right? Yeah, they still regulate it. Federal Communications Commission, not Federal Radiation Commission or Radio Communications Commission. The reason it's regulated is you're using a bunch of government-subsidized, deal with the devil cabling that the government subsidized so that we could have a telecom system that worked for, Cold War era reliability and also because it's a public good. Oh no, that's socialism going on. Yes, having reliable telephone services from coast to coast is totally communism. Anyway, the point of it, fuck you. The point of this thing is that you had to give something back to the people of the United States. It's not socialism or communism to say that we the people regulate corporations, and that's something corporations do not like. We the people, even if it's done through a snooty government that takes bribes, somewhere along the way, they lose. A bunch of these companies are really angry that you have the other gimmies. One of the gimmies, again here from the 1980s and forward, is acknowledging that phone lines are pretty much mandatory. Eventually, internet is considered pretty damn necessity-based, and even cell phones are considered a necessity. Poor people, more often than not, don't have a landline. The landline we used when we were poor was the phone booth up the street that would let you receive calls, which it should always do, because if somebody's calling you, that means they're paying the bill, you're not, so why are you restricting my access to this payphone? Well, it's not a public phone. They're defined as public phones because the FCC regulates them as public good. Yes, there's a bunch of rules that sound really commie about how corporations can't gouge the dog shit out of poor people. And if you don't like that, fuck you. I like it this way. The point is, cell phones by the night, 2008 or whatever, when they added them, before Obama had anything to do with it, they allowed for you to, if you can get a cheap phone, great, I don't know where you're going to get one. People were still thinking of cell phones as a luxury item. They weren't. You could get cheap phones. When I was doing telecom service as a tech support person, you'd get people who got a phone at the thrift store for $15 or $5, or just found one that was thrown away. People would pull out the SIM card, because that was how it was kept, the data, master reset it, pull out the SIM card and toss it. And they would put the SIM card in the next available phone. Maybe the phone stopped doing something. Maybe one of the buttons was stuck and they didn't know how to take it apart and clean it. They would put it in their new phone and toss it, or give it away to Goodwill. because it didn't work as well as it should, or the battery was going bad, or it wasn't able to charge cleanly. So someone would get one, put in a battery that was easier to charge or fix it, whatever, and use it for whatever. But if they didn't have a SIM card, meaning they weren't paying service in some way through, minute cards or through paying a monthly fee, the phone would still work. Well, why? Why? Because the FCC requires that it can call 911. It always has to work. It doesn't have any other ID codes in it other than a fake number that's all zeros, or it'll spit out its IMEI and other data codes that it has to identify itself uniquely, because that's how it negotiates communication. And also, in this mode, it might have high watt mode, we called it, which means it would put out maximum wattage for assuming a cell phone antenna is much further away, which means it would force a connection. Even if it can detect any towers, it would call out to them because it's dialing for help. That was one of the ways you could trick a phone into working. You dial 911 really quick and then end the call, and while it's in high watt mode, suddenly it would have service that it didn't have before and save your ass. Hacking. But anyway, the point is, as a public good, that socialism method, the FCC would require that if you're going to use essentially a free system in the United States and make trillions of dollars as a big conglomerate, usually exploiting poor people a lot, you should let them have some free minutes a month. You should maybe give them a discount on the phone if we say so, because they can prove that they really are poor. And you have to let them be able to call for frickin' help and get an ambulance instead of saying, your minutes are up. No, their minutes aren't up. Shut the fuck up. That was the deal that they made, a dirty deal with the government. Because cell phone companies, when they started doing this, were using data trunk lines owned by the U.S. government because they're fucking ex-military, Cold War cabling. And you know that GPS that's used along with the 911 call these days? Yep, government control. Why? Because it was used for navigation under nuclear war conditions. It included a scramble code originally to keep it out of the hands of ordinary people beyond, being able to get approximately your location. But that caused enough confusion, problems, and in some cases deaths, that it was deregulated and we no longer have a scramble code. So that got it added in. Yeah, it can spit out a string of codes that you all use now when you're giving GPS locations for your, stuff. Because we all use maps, we all use this high-tech stuff. So now your cell phone will spit out your GPS information if you enable it, or it may be defaulted that way, to the 911 operator so they can send help to you if you can't even speak. You can dial 911 and lay there, and they might send help. Yeah, this is a public good. It helps everybody. It's not socialism or communism or whatever ism you want to scream. It's not woke. It's the basic necessities we need. When we dial for help, they should be able to find us. When we try to get a job and we have to have a cell phone on us and they want it to be a drop of a hat because it's a dog-eat-dog world, a cell phone would work better because it's with you all the time rather than a landline you're only at if you have a place to live. And if you're so poor you don't have a place to live, we don't have access to as many or any payphones anymore. And yes, it's a public telephone. That's the reason the word public is used. They were legally compelled to use the word public telephone. It's a part of the commons. It's a public good. This forcing very large corporations to pay tribute to the masses is something that has to be done to keep them in check. Yes, at one time cell phones were a luxury item, and people were upset. Why should poor people have something good? Because apparently you hate them. I guess that's a real argument. But the other thing is, they were getting cheap phones, and they always have been. But you could take the SIM card out of the cheap phone and get the maybe slightly scratch and dent or knockoff iPhone and stick the SIM card in. Well, that means they bought them a phone. No, they didn't buy the phone. They bought the phone that the person chucked over at the Goodwill or thrift shop after they got done using it for the minutes and time they wanted because they happened to get a hold of the phone or stole it. But you're not looking at a Obama phone. Obama phone at that point would be euphemistic for stolen, which has nothing to do with Obama. Does the government have anything to do with this? Technically, there is a taxation system, but it taxes telecom companies to pay into a fund that they use then through themselves, which they found increases their sales. because it's a starter phone most people get for their kids. The kids then upgrade it by changing out the handset, meaning they switch from the, candy bar, Nokia, drive a nail with it phone, and stick it in or transfer it over to an iPhone or whatever. Yes, I know SIM cards are old. Yes, I'm old. I did tech support for this. We would just transfer it over to one that had the integral data. That's what you have with the new phones. Or not. I mean, there are SIM card based phones. I think still. Or are there? But anyway, the first handheld or mobile phone came out in the 1980s, and they were more ubiquitous in the 90s. And yes, some of those were put on what you would call, at that time, a Reagan phone thing. So is there any way anybody can weasel Obama into it? Someone yelling in a meme, Obama phone, and coining the term had nothing to do with Obama. It isn't him. And they don't actually really regulate this much anymore. And yes, there's controversies. And yes, you can blame it on Hillary's server, email server if you want to. Butter emails. Go ahead. But it's got nothing to do with, Obama had little or nothing to do with any of this. The only expansions or any alterations he did literally happened. Technically, he kind of rubber stamped the adding of cell phones as a default, because duh, that should be there. By that point, you get cheap ones. But the only thing he really contributed to was the Al Gore internet invention being added in as, maybe poor people should have access to the internet in some way, limited bandwidth, just a dial-up connection, literally using the same bandwidth the phone would for the same minutes. You can take a cell phone and hook up an old dial-up to it and it'll work. Just saying. So, to review. And also I should point out, most telecom companies are now fusing together so that your cable, the phone, and the internet all at once. Virtually all of you have that. And if they're not that, they're definitely phone and cable. Or excuse me, phone and internet, not just cable. And I'm talking cable TV. Because these are all using radio signals and wired systems that are under FCC rulings, all of them have to do something that's a public good, whether it be GPS functionality or GPS transfer data during a phone call, if you allow it, or that phone call being a 911 call, or it being required even if you didn't pay your damn bill, making someone have to pay a nickel in order to call for the police. You'd go, operator, you're there? Yeah, okay, I need the police at this location. Put 20 cents in. No, that's not how it works. And yeah, once all of the payphones disappeared, this kind of became obvious that it should be cell phone enabled, because we need that. Because, yeah. So, why do people, and I'm going to do the rant, why do people use this as a propaganda point? Because it works, because it's a thought-terminating cliche. It's used for propaganda purposes by conservatives. This is a Reagan era thing. Want to see how many people voted for it and see what the majority were and see if the Republicans supported it? Everybody supported this idea so it would help with unemployment, and it was a feel-good thing, and it didn't cost the taxpayers any money. Unless you buy a phone, you don't get any taxes on it. And some phone companies don't even pass it on to the consumer. And some of them only pass it on to the people who are using it. They make them pay an extra bill, so they're not really giving them a subsidy anyway. So, hey, I guess that'll make a Reaganomics asshole really happy. Oh, you're screwing over some poor people? Drool. But yeah. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Good luck with that. And it's not an Obama phone. It's a Reagan phone.